Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Civic Centre here in Leyland in Lancashire. We have international people watching from all over the world. Okay, so welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel. I'm Councillor Ange Turner, the Chair of the Scrutiny Committee, and we have a panel members in the Civic Centre along with the necessary officers' support. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and we will be available on the Council's website. Some housekeeping first. For those in the Civic Centre, there are no fire drills planned, and if the alarm does go off, please leave by the emergency exit at the back of the room and congregate on the car park. Please turn off mobile phones and switch your microphones off when not speaking. For those joining us via Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at the appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. I'll now move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. There are none. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded to declare any interests they may have on any of the agenda items. Minutes of the meeting on Monday, the 20th of June, 2022. Members are asked to approve the minutes of the last meeting for the Chair to sign. Do I have your approval?
Yep.
Yes. That's majority, thank you. Sign those after you. Okay. Moving on to item 4, matters arising from previous scrutiny, budget and performance panel meetings. As the recommendations from previous meetings have been accepted and implemented, it is recommended that they be removed from the list. Item 5, Quarter 2 Performance Monitoring Report 2022 to 2023. I'm delighted that the leader of the council is here, Councillor Paul Foster, with the support from his management team, Vicky Willett. And I will invite the leader now to say a few words of introduction. Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Chair. With your permission, Chair, I was going to ask Vicky, I think you want quality rather than quantity. So if it was okay by you, I was going to ask Vicky just to quickly brief you on the headlines, and then I will then answer any questions you may have, if that's okay, Chair.
That's fine. Welcome, Vicky. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So yes, this is the quarterly report for quarter 2, presenting the performance of the corporate strategy for the 1st of July to the 30th of September. The report provides an update on the current position for the 15 projects, the 27 corporate strategy performance measures and the 11 key organisational performance measures. Overall performance is good. Of the 15 projects in the strategy, 80% are rated green or complete, just 20% rated amber. And of the 18 performance indicators used to monitor the strategy, 10 can be reported at the end of the quarter, with 5 performing better than target and 2 worse than target, and outside of the threshold. So some key highlights include our employment rate is significantly higher than the regional average at 84% compared to 73%. We're performing above target on some of our housing delivery. The number of average working days for approving disabled facilities grants is positive, and the council tax and business rates collection remains strong with above year target performance compared with last year. In terms of some of the project outcomes, we can see that under an exemplary council, we have achievements in terms of the work of the partnership in delivering some roundtable events with businesses to further engage and understand and to build a dialogue with businesses post-COVID to get a better understanding of what their needs are. So that links back into the wider work of the partnership around building our understanding of the needs of the borough and working better together with partners to meet those needs. We've continued to progress improvements in customer services and ICT. A new training academy has been developed to get new staff up to speed as quickly as possible. And we've also continued to progress our workplace strategy to make sure that we've got the best possible facilities for our staff in the working environment. Under Thriving Communities, the community hubs continue to be successful. A youth development officer has been appointed to strengthen and develop the work of the Youth Council and in other areas of youth work. And then the South Ribble Together brand has been developed under the Discover South Ribble brand is developed under the South Ribble Tourism Strategy, which will be further extended over the coming quarter. And then if we look to a fair local economy, work around the establishment of cooperatives has progressed with the pilot projects now in development, and the cost of living task group has been formed with some key examples at point 32 in the report of where we've been able to invest in supporting residents. And then finally, under good homes, green spaces and healthy places, Woden Park has now reopened. Progress has been made towards improving the leisure facilities, and workers continue to deliver affordable housing through the Mackenzie Arms site and various others across the borough. So that's a quick summary of some of the performance and project achievements this quarter, and then happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Vicky. So I'll go with the first question. Page 16, paragraph 22. You mentioned that it mentions there is made of delivering projects with the action plans at Appendix 3. Is this the total of all projects delivered by the community hubs? And how are the community hub action plans monitored? There doesn't seem to be a proper delivered, a project delivered for Penwitham Community Hub.
Thanks, Shay. Well, you know, the Cabinet member, Councillor Bielinski-Gelder, looks closely at the community hubs, and as you also are aware, to Chair, that the committee is aware that we do look for the hubs to be self-monitoring and self-managing as well. As a Cabinet, we have an overview and we do keep a close look at that, but predominantly it's for the hubs to deliver their priorities for their communities. In respect to Penwitham, I'm looking at Will as the chair of the Penwitham Community Hub, because I don't, off the top of my head, understand why this statement that nothing's been delivered in Penwitham, because I know you yourself, Chair, have delivered a lot as well. So we can have another look at that, because I think that's quite misleading, because the Penwitham Hub's a very successful hub. I know it's championing new methods of working as well.
Yeah, thank you. As chair, obviously the hub. As of our last meeting, we've actually now removed quite a few projects from our action plan due to them being completed. So I'm not sure if that's just maybe an error in the pack, possibly. But we certainly have delivered quite a few projects under your stewardship, chair, as well. So thank you.
Yeah, we apologise for that. It's the way it's presented. It's not the case. Yeah.
So will that be amended for next time, no doubt? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Right. Next question is from Councillor Will Adams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just take you again, page 16, paragraph 24. Just looking at seems to be a lot of activity promoting the visitor offer in South Ribble. I'm just wondering what success looks like in this area. There's also a mention of a South Ribble 5-year tourism strategy. I was wondering when we might possibly see that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Will. The tourism strategy is due out in the next few months, so I'd hope by the first quarter. And as always, we'll be asking the Scrutiny Committee to have a look at that with us. This is hopefully one of those areas where it's non-political, because it's about the borough. And it's about the offering of the borough to the wider community. So the website, I hope you've all looked at the Discover South Ribble website, is really good. And it's the purpose of it, Will, is to encourage more footfall, more business and more people to our borough, because we've got so much to offer. And there's a raft of evidence up and down the country, and we work with the LGA with this, is where you positively promote your borough all the time, and your area and your place, that more people do visit. And there's that much that we have, you know, Penwitham, Hurst Grange, all the work we're doing on Word, and particularly with the Party in the Park and the other schemes that we're working on. We're raising the profile, and that's what it's all about, is to increase footfall. But also we want our local businesses to fall on the back of it as well, so they can use it as a portal themselves moving forward as part of the strategy for advertising what they offer as well. So that's the plan. But the moment we get the strategy and it's ready, we'll bring it to the Scrutiny Committee for some joint working.
Right, thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Foster. Next question, Councillor Coulton, please. Sorry, will the two Collins not sit together, please? Split up. Okay, sorry. Councillor Sharples.
Really tricky question, this. Congratulations on the success of Music in the Park and Queen's Jubilee celebrations. What has been learned for future events?
Thanks, Colin. What has been learned is that there's a huge demand for it, and we should do it more, and not necessarily just in Leyland as well, because we've got some wonderful assets throughout the borough. We've got, Colin, in Longton, we've got some Hurst Grange Park, we've got Withy Grove in Bamber Bridge, and obviously Worthing Park in Leyland. And the Music in the Park Festival was great for a number of reasons, because sometimes people just like being happy, and that might sound really cheesy, but they were. It was a really, really good, enjoyable day for the community. But then you look at the kickback then that the local business communities had. Leyland was basically packed for a full weekend, and you may or may not recall, we published the figures about the added value that the local businesses and the local community gained from the Music in the Park. And so I think the main learning that we've taken from it is that continue to do it. We want to ultimately turn it into potentially a profitable scheme for the borough as well, so that the council's not having to underwrite it. And hopefully you'll start seeing, particularly with the town funding that's gone into Leyland as well, where we're going to do some significant improvements to the Leyland town centre, that these things fall, hand in glove, and it's just a win-win. And it also helps supporting the Leyland Festival as well, which is going from strength to strength. The Penwitham Gala, the Longton Live, we do an awful lot in our borough that I just think we need to be shouting about much more, Chair.
Councillor Coulton.
You did mention Longton Live, which was a resounding success this year. It was absolutely magnificent. And I thank the officers for their contribution in, arranging it.
No, and thanks, Colin. Thanks, Chair. So I should have mentioned Longton Live, because Longton Live's historically been with us for a while, as Penwitham Live has. And what we're finding, and you all will see this as local residents, that the community absolutely loves stuff like this, and therefore we need to embrace it more and do more of it if we can. But again, the other thing is that our officers are good at organising it as well, and they are. So thanks to them.
Yeah, Councillor Foster, just to add, it's good to see that ambition from the council leadership. Next question. Question 4, please, from Karen. Councillor Walton. Sorry, familiarity.
Good evening. My question is on about page 18. I've got a couple of questions actually about the Unify Credit Union. Reference is made there to being several closures as a result of issues within the building. And as the council owns the building and provides the building, what have the issues been? And are you confident that the credit union will be able to operate in the next months uninterrupted? And as we've suggested before, the credit union could provide outreach services to other parts of the borough. And has there been any progress on this? And I know, Vicky, you sent us some figures about the number of savers, but still at Q2 it's 69, but it's still well below the target of 100. So what initiatives are being put in place to improve these numbers?
Chair, should we start with the last then? And then it is disappointing that we haven't that we're under target with the number of savers, but I think as it says within the report, it's a real challenge for our community at the moment when it comes to the cost of living, and we're doing everything we possibly can to encourage those individuals that want to save. But I think if I'm being bluntly honest, Karen, there just isn't the availability of money within families at the moment that want for saving. It's just, and it is the the crisis that our community finds themselves in. That said, it doesn't mean that we're not constantly working with the community to try and increase that figure. Now, that then fits into the next question about taking it out wider into the community, and that's something that we're still looking at. It's based here, as you know, in Leyland, but we've mentioned before, haven't we, that we're going to commence engaging more with the community hubs and the likes of Penwitham Town Council, Farrington Parish Council, to see where there's the appropriate locations for the credit union to come in and work with our community. But I think that's very much down to us and the local council, us as well, to communicate this and promote this. But most certainly, I think the hubs, we will be looking to ask the hubs to do more with us in respect to the credit union. The issue of the fact it was closed once or twice, if those that know the building, we own the entire building, but we've got a tenant upstairs as well, and there was an issue of flooding, wasn't there, Vicky, that we have ended up taking very robust action, shall we say, on that tenant to deal with the issues. Those issues are resolved now, but it was rather disappointing that it wasn't dealt with quicker.
Councillor Walton, has that answered all the questions? Okay, thank you. Councillor Coulton.
Sorry. It mentions transformational regeneration projects, including the Citadel. Could you talk us through these projects and tell us where we're at with each of the projects as regards delivery?
Thanks, Colin. So let's just be clear here. So we're talking about it mentions the Leyland Town deal.
Yeah.
So with the Leyland Town deal, that's, as hopefully, well, we're all aware, we achieved our full funding about 2 weeks ago. Government and fair play, and we thank the Town Deal Board for the support, particularly the chair, Charles Hadcock. But we've secured that funding now, and we're on with it. And you'll note that I think it's on the cabinet meeting on Wednesday, Colin, that the cabinet's approving the next stages of the design team, professional team contract awards. So you'll see now that we're fully on with the delivery of the Town Deal. It's a £38 million investment into Leyland, of which 25 million of it's coming from the government. I think we've been extremely lucky to secure that funding, Colin, because I do understand that moving ahead, the Chancellor, with his announcement, I think it's Thursday, isn't it, is a lot of these schemes could be cut. So we've managed just to get in time, which is wonderful news. Did you ask about the City Deal as well, or were you just referring to the Town Deal?
I said other projects.
Or other projects. So the City Deal, there's a briefing coming to all councillors on Thursday about the City Deal. As you'll be aware that the City Deal has been beset with issues of funding from the government again. It was the cornerstone of the income, or one of the cornerstones of the income generation on the City Deal was the new homes bonus. The government has, I don't want, this isn't about a political disagreement, but the government has reneged on that, and that's left a shortfall in funding on the City Deal. So there's a briefing that's going to all councillors on Thursday, and there's a detailed paper going to the next meeting of the council in 2 weeks, where the council's been made to asked to make a decision on how we proceed with the City Deal, and the options will be there for you all to see. And what I've asked the officers to do is provide every single paper and piece of information that we've been privy to, and we've actually asked the officers of Lancashire County Council, the accountable body, to write their recommendations as well, and we are sharing that with you, Colin. So this is just their view, and then we need to make a decision on it. I don't know if there's any other strategic projects. There's the next door, which is the extra care, the Jubilee House, is it called? I can't remember. Jubilee Gardens. Sorry, I should be able to remember that, shouldn't I? That's coming to the next meeting of council as well for the final approval of the budgets, and we expect to start that in January. Provision of 72 state-of-the-art new homes for over 55s, I believe it is. The Worden Hall is finished, and I hope you've been up to have a look at it, Colin, because it's absolutely fantastic. The council housing on the former site in Bamber Bridge of Mackenzie Arms is on track to be fully complete by January. Any other ones? I love waxing lyrical about it, so.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks. Councillor Colton, can you just switch your mic off, please? Thank you. Right, next question, Councillor Sharples.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Bottom of the same page, right at the bottom, that one measure that's being baseline, the total social value delivered locally to the social value portal. When will that be? When will that baseline be known, and when we'll be able to report on progress with that measure?
Thank you, Councillor. So that one we're baselining at the moment, and we're just about to come up to the refresh of the corporate strategy, which will be coming to council next week. I think 2 weeks, ahead of myself there. And in that we will put forward the new list of corporate performance indicators. So we should be attaching a value to that one, and looking at potentially updating that one to the percentage of contracts with a certain percentage of social value achieved. So there will be an opportunity at that point to have a look at what the performance has been, and what the future measures should be to make sure that we're getting the best kind of monitor of how we're achieving social value.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walton.
Thank you. My question is on page 23 about delivery of affordable homes. Could you just explain why the project has not been assessed as red, as it's off track when compared against the original programmes?
It's because we believe, because it's within the thresholds that and I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm looking for Vicky to help me out here, but it's only slightly delayed on its programme date of delivery, and it's within budget. So therefore, I think we talk at times within this 5% threshold, don't we, on budget in particular, but it's, I actually think, given the challenges that we've had on the site, that a minor delay on programme isn't significant, Karen. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Vicky.
Yeah, as part of the programme management process, we review sort of mitigating actions that have been put in place, and we also look to check that there's a plan in place to bring the project back on track. If that plan is in place and it looks robust, and we're starting to see delivery, then we will rate it as amber. So that's generally the way that it's rated.
Okay, so the project is within the 5% and it is on track. So you're expecting it to come in within budget and on.
The mitigating actions and the action plan in place suggests that it should be brought back on track, in line with the action plan that's included in the report.
Chair, just through you, Chair, just to be absolutely transparent about this as well, it isn't a budget challenges we face here. It was treble glazing, believe it or not. So you'll all be aware of the challenges that many businesses have experienced in importing from Europe. I won't use the B word, but the B word has created some challenges, and it's treble glazed, if you remember, because it's energy efficiency of the properties, and the glazing has delayed the installation of the windows, which delayed the installation of, and it's just been a knock-on impact. However, all the glass is in now; it's all done, it's complete, and therefore the contractors working as hard as they can to bring the completion date forward as quickly as possible.
Karen. Councillor Walton, are you okay with that? Okay, thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Page 24 looks at the number of people that have been prevented from becoming homeless. Can you talk us through the definition of this indicator, how you define being homeless, and how is it measured?
In terms of the specific definition, we do have one. I'm not going to try and pretend that I know it off the top of my head, but I will be able to supply it afterwards. In terms of how it's monitored, we capture that information from the team in terms of the number of preventions. So this is the people, and I can't quote the specific figures, but anybody who presents to us, it's those that we're able to find alternative accommodation within a suitable period. So that's, and I'll be able to clarify the full definition and provide it with provided to you afterwards, if that's okay.
And how much control do we as a councillor have over providing homes for the homes?
So I'll answer that one if I may, Chair, Colin, because it may be more of a political response. We have minimal control because ultimately the government set quite challenging targets that we are monitored upon about temporary accommodation, and rightly so, particularly hotels and bed and breakfasts. But that requires onward housing for us to place these families, and there just isn't any. And that's a huge challenge that we've got moving forward, is we've got nowhere to house our community, our local community who are presenting as homeless. We're then having additional refugees sent up, and we've got nowhere to house them either. And what frustrates us is that we're given strict guidelines about how long the government will fund the temporary accommodation for. And then if we as a local authority haven't got the families housed by, then the government starts threatening and does actually cut the funding. But what do? Just kick them out of the temporary accommodation? No, we can't do that, can we? So it's a real challenge for us. But fundamentally, the biggest single challenge we face as a local authority is the lack of affordable type homes for us to move these families and individuals into, and that's where we need to concentrate our efforts.
So, given all that and all the problems you've got, how confident are you of, getting this problem under control?
I'm not confident at all, Colin. I think it's going to get worse and worse and worse, particularly during the cost of living crisis that we now face, and the fact that the mortgage rates have started to increase. That the evidence is there in the report that the numbers of individuals presenting themselves as homeless and the number of families is increasing week on week. And the only way through this is it needs direct government intervention to support us in getting more housing available as quickly as possible. And there are routes through this, but it requires capital investment from the government or this council doing something different, and building more homes for our community.
So are we, tackling the government to get them to shell out more?
Yeah, so it's nationally. I know we're tackling the government. I know that the LGA themselves, who represent the local government association, Chair, are tackling government on a weekly basis about this. This is a chronic problem that we are facing. Because if you remember, during the COVID pandemic, the government provided additional resources for us to house the homeless. And we took on the site, remember, in Bamber Bridge on the Purple Rooms, I think it was. And the government funded that for us to house those families that didn't have anywhere else to live. They've withdrawn that funding now. But I would argue the cost of living crisis, Colin, is as acute, if not more acute, than the pandemic that we've just been through. But with no funding available for that. So we have to find it. And just so you know, we South Ribble Council, under the instruction of this executive, does not turn any homeless person away. And if they present themselves as homeless, we will support them with or without government funding.
I'll take a question from Councillor Adams, who had his hand up about this, correct? And then I will take a question from the Cabinet member, Councillor Titherington. Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. It's just obviously you made reference there about we seem to solve the homelessness issue in the country over the course of 48 hours, which was great. But obviously now we're in a position where it looks like it's going to get significantly worse over the coming months and years. Have we got relevant resources available? And I know that we have limited capacity of what we can do, but do we have the resources within the council to get the support, or certainly to advise residents or people who might need that support?
Thanks, Will. Really good question, because as Vicky just said to me there, what we've done with the homeless strategy as well is we've tried to link it in with our partners in Chorley and the Chorley and South River Partnership, where we've got the likes of the NHS and the other partner organisations that feed in, because it's just not solely us that can deliver. There's sometimes, as you'll be aware of, Will, there's normally a lot of acute issues that come with those individuals that are declaring and presenting themselves as homeless. But the challenge we have here, and we must as a society wake up to this is a chronic problem, and it's getting worse. And I dread to think, and I know when Mick speaks in a minute, and I'm not going to speak for him, but it's something that Mick's really championing now, because the evidence is there that the number of people presenting is increasing week on week, and there just is not any available accommodation to support these individuals, and there's no funding. But as a council, we have a duty to do something. We can't just stand by and say no, and we won't. And then that's an issue with resource. So internally, we do have a great team, a housing team that work on this. We have robust policies, but as I said to you earlier, Will, we've also a policy in place that we will help every individual that presents themselves. We will not let anybody fall by the wayside.
Well, actually, I was nodding my head in agreement with the leader. And just to sort of confirm what he said, I mean, the problem that we've got is that the number of people who are presenting to us as homeless or possibly becoming homeless is increasing. And the number of properties that are available are decreasing for a number of reasons. Even in the well, first of all, we're not building enough affordable social housing, and secondly, the number of landlords in the private sector is diminishing because they're selling up and getting out of there. But I mean, I would like to reassure the committee is that we are doing everything that we can, as the leader said. I mean, we do have a duty. There are people who we have a statutory duty to house, and there are other people who are homeless who we don't have a statutory duty, but we don't turn anybody away. But if you look at the figures, I mean, and the figures in temporary accommodation, they are increasing, and that's disappointing, and it's sad, but it is because of those problems that we are experiencing. And if you do look nationally, it is a national problem. And again, as the leader said, is that the LGA are making representations to government to solve it. The other thing is that what we are doing is that there are people who present who do have very complex problems, and they need some really difficult solutions. But we are working with the government and seeking funding to be able to sort of accommodate those people as far as we can. But it is, I don't think we want to disguise the fact that it is a major problem, big problem.
Thank you, Councillor. Next question, page 25. Fundraising. In terms of the percentage of calls answered within 90 seconds, this indicator has been a concern for some time, with many of the actions outlined being reported to us previously. Could the increase in call volumes have been predicted or action taken earlier to respond to the increase? Second question, what more can be done to accelerate the improvements?
Thanks, Chair. Could we have predicted? No, I don't think we could have predicted the huge demand. If you recall, the government, what impacted us, we just got the improvements to a point where we were comfortable that we were making significant progress. Post-pandemic, if you remember, because all our staff had been working from homes for some considerable period of time, and the upgrades to the IT system. And then we were hit with the 150 quid utility contribution, and we knew nothing about that, Chair, until government basically told us that we were administering it. And then the problem you had was that the government then instructed individuals to get in touch with the local authority, and so they did, in their thousands and thousands and thousands, and we just really struggled to deal with that. Where we have, though, and I've said this to you before, Chair, where we have accepted responsibility, as we do, is that the planning then around the reintroduction of the garden waste. We knew about that because we looked, that was being done at Q1, and then you look back and think, well, maybe was that the right time to do some upgrades? Perhaps not. And so we've learnt our lessons there, and as you'll all be aware, and I think it says so within the report, we're looking to get as many as we possibly can on the garden waste onto direct debits now. And there was another glitch with the IT where that didn't work. So, I'm not going to make excuses. We take responsibility for what's happened. However, what I can report to you again is that there are significant improvements still being made on these statistics. The numbers of calls are beginning to come down, and the response rates are much better. Finally, you will also be aware that as of September, we've also started increasing the staffing significantly, and we've introduced a number of apprentices into that area. And I think we're fully staffed now, Vicky. I think we're up to more or less, aren't we? Yeah, we're almost fully staffed now. And you'll also, please, because this is relevant to it, you'll have seen the latest staff survey as well, where morale is improving significantly within the gateway now as well. So a little bit more time would hopefully have dealt with these issues, but also it then adds into the IT upgrades that we're also introducing, where hopefully a lot more of it can be done remotely anyway without the need to call, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that. I've just got an extra question then. So if we take the example of council tax and the payment, do we have an idea as a council as to what percentage of residents have now been paid that council tax? Just to see what the size is of that's left, of the scope of the size that's left, where it's going to impact on potentially the telephone lines. I don't know if we've paid 70% of the rebate to the resident of the whole, or 80%. What's the percentage, just out of?
Thanks, Chair. It's a very relevant question, and I don't know the answer. What I do know is that we'll write to you by the morning with that figure. It's a significantly
by the morning.
Yeah, but I've seen it recently, Chair, and I can't remember. But what I can say is it's a high number of payments have been made, a very high number, but there are still a few outstanding that we're chasing through.
Right, thanks for that, Councillor Foster. Councillor Adams, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's good to hear that staffing seems to be sorted or nearly sorted, which is great to hear. Just a little bit of a moan, really, from me in terms of the action plan. It talks about a number of actions and initiatives will be put in place. It doesn't really tell us a lot. Is there any chance that for future we can actually have what those actions and initiatives are in the report? Because that would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. We can certainly add that in, just in terms of some examples. Obviously, the resource planning around call volumes, we will try to do more of that predictive resource matching, as you suggest, so that where we do know that there will be kind of mail shots going out or things that may prompt demands, we'll try to forecast that or preempt that and put staffing in place. Further capacity to answer calls has been provided by kind of making sure that this new way of being able to answer calls in the back office, so that we can quickly move more capacity into the front office to pick up calls, is being put in place now. We're kind of those remaining vacancies, we've got a kind of a really robust plan to get those filled now, and a dedicated training and development officer to upskill staff as quickly as possible. We've got the apprentices in place so that they should be able to be more responsive, and then we're offering additional hours as well where staff want them, so that we can continue to match demand. And so there is a lot of activity in that space to make sure that we can kind of respond and use service intelligence really as far as possible, so that to make sure that we're meeting demand as we go forward. But I will make sure that you get a really thorough kind of action plan for the next quarterly report.
Right, thanks, Councillor Adams. Item 6. Sorry. Any members not on the committee that would like to ask any questions? No, okay. I'll move on now to item 6. Sorry. And so what are the recommendations, Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes that have been discussed this evening, the panel might like to consider including as recommendations are: the panel thanks the leader and director for attending and answering the panel's questions. The panel asks that future reports include a more comprehensive list of community hub achievements and successes. The panel welcomes the offer of scrutiny evaluating the Discover South Ribble Borough Promotion Initiative. The panel congratulates those involved in Music in the Park and the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. The panel looks forward to receiving further information on the prevention of homelessness indicator definition and also in lobbying for additional government funding for this important issue. And finally, the panel welcomes the commitment to improving call waiting times as quickly as possible and that more detailed information be provided in future reports. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vicky. Right. So we now move on to item 6, Corporate Revenue Budget Monitoring Report and Reserves for the 6 months to 20th September 2022. And I'm delighted to welcome Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, Cabinet Member for Finance, Property and Assets, who will present this item, supported by Louise Mattison, Director of Finance. Over to you, Councillor Tomlinson.
Thank you, Chair. And in contrast to my glorious leader, I think I'll do it the other way around. So I'll do a potted highlights report, and then if there are any technical questions, I shall defer to someone far more qualified than I am. If you'll forgive me or allow me, I think I'd like to take both reports together. So I'll talk about the revenue report and then the capital and reserves report as well. So as far as the revenue is concerned, what this report tells us is where we are now predicting we will be at the end of the year based on what we know up to the 30th of September. So based on the original budget, we would have been forecasting an underspend of some £213,000. However, that was set with an assumption that the staff wage budget would increase by 2% this year. As I'm sure members are aware, the government have decided to give a flat pay award of some £1,925 to each and every member of staff, regardless of what grade they're on.
Sorry, I'm sorry to stop you there because there was a pause. Can you just quantify or clarify the figure again, please?
£1,925 per year to each and every member of staff, regardless of the grade. I think that's right. Now, when you work that out across the staffing structure, it works out at about 7% of our total cost. So it's a significant change to our staffing budget.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt you. When you say 7% of total cost, are you talking the salary bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the salary bill has gone up around 7%. Obviously, it's a bigger figure for people who are on lower wages in percentage terms, and a smaller one for those who are more well remunerated. But across the piece, it works out at around 7%, and we have only budgeted for 2%. So that means we estimate that's added an extra 447,000 to our staffing wage bill this year. So instead of an underspend, we're now saying that at this stage in the cycle, we're predicting that by the end of the year, we will overspend on our budget at £234,000. There's also pressures, of course, from utility bills that every household is aware of, and we're potentially looking, that figure will add some pressure of around £180,000, we think. There are some variances, as always, across the directorates, and they are itemised through bullet points 14 to 20. In the main, they are the usual small variances that are explained in the text following. The only other thing I'd say about the revenue budget, I do want to highlight something that's under risk as bullet point 32. And this is, I think, a really important thing to flag up. What we haven't got yet is the increased utility costs and staffing costs from our leisure company. And heating leisure centres can be really expensive. At the moment, we're thinking that's likely to be, I think I've not written the figure down, it's about 400,000. 500, I beg your pardon, about £500,000. It's important to point out, I think, that we would be facing that cost pressure even if Serco was still running our leisure centres, because the contract that we had would have meant that they would have just come to us for the extra money anyway. But it is something that we're keeping a really close eye on, and that could again significantly add to our costs.
Sorry, I've got another question, just
Yeah.
for clarification. The 180,000 provision for utility bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Is that on top of the 234,000 overspend? Because I can't see the description if it is of. Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, the overspend on utility bills is included in the overall position of the council. The point that Councillor Tomlinson was referring to then, which is about the cost of leisure, that is completely outside of the council's accounts. That's contained within the leisure company.
sorry, Louise, can you speak up a bit?
Yeah.
But, let me just. So what you're saying is the 180,000 on the utility bills. I'm still misunderstanding this. Is that included in the 234,000 overspend or not?
Yeah, the £180,000 that you're referring to, which point is?
Because in just nothing helps the trend.
No, I think.
Well, it was something that Matthew
It
mentioned.
was, and I apologise. I haven't written down in my notes where it is in the report. Sorry.
I think I'm assuming at point 14, when we describe the overspend on commercial and property directorate, the overspend includes £174,000 overspend in relation to gas, electricity and water. So that is the overspend on utilities within the council, and that is included in the overall financial position of the council.
Of the 234,000.
234.
Right, okay. I've got another question, sorry. So an exclusion. So we've got another exclusion that Matthew, Councillor Tomlinson mentioned, I think, which is the leisure setup. So just on page 40, you mentioned the 450,000. That is an exclusion to the potentially,
That's
right?
potentially actually. I apologise if my prose was less clear than it should have been. Yes, so the 180,000 pressures on utilities that we've already experienced are included in the projected overspend. What's not included is the pressures that's going to come from our leisure company.
Okay, that's clear. Thanks. Right. Sorry, have you carried on with you? Do you want to carry on?
If I
Sorry,
go on
carry
to
on with you.
speak on the capital programme, there are two minor revisions that people will see to the capital programme, and that's to move 45,000. Oh, thank you, Councillor. And that's to move £45,000 from the green infrastructure budget to a project to repair the old Worden Hall wall. Can I just reassure members, this is not spending more money on the Worden Hall project. For those who know the park, this is the last remaining bit of wall from the frontage of the old building, and it's right next to the glass house. It's quite a nice, interesting feature, but it's not had any money spent on it for many, many years. and if we're going to save it, we need to spend some money on it. So that's what that is. And the other minor revision is to move £30,000 from the small parks and play areas budget to the open spaces budget for some further remediation works at Bent Lane Playground, where you'll recall we've had to do quite a lot of work linked to it being a former waste tip. The major revision is to move monies for the leisure centre decarbonisation and refurbishment programme to the next financial year, because it's clear to us that we're not going to get the whole project completed this year. And so we are moving 7.357 million of that budget into next year, fully intending to get the works done, but clearly the way it is at the moment, trying to get people to do work and source work, we're not going to get it done this year. It'll be next year. And then I just wanted to point out that at bullet point 26, we're currently forecasting that at the end of this financial year, we will have no borrowing and no debt. And I think that's a really important point to make.
Thank you for that report, Councillor Tomlinson, and your contribution, Louise. Okay, so first question. Probably kind of answered this a little bit already, actually. In general terms, how is the cost of living crisis impacting on the council's budgetary position?
Thanks. Well, obviously, the cost of living crisis is contributed or is significantly made up because of inflation. And as you said, I've pointed out where inflation is hurting us. Wage inflation, utility inflation. It is undoubtedly like everyone, it's having an effect. I'm guessing that this Thursday the Chancellor won't be announcing any extra funding for local government. So I think it's just something we're going to have to work with, and we'll need to work out a plan of how to deal with this, probably over the medium-term financial strategy, I think. But undoubtedly, it's having an effect. What will be interesting is how demand for some of our services changes as our residents are affected by the cost of living crisis. And again, that's something we'll need to keep a real close eye on. I think we've got a good track record here of managing these financial bumps in the road. We might need to buy ourselves a little bit of time, but I'm sure we can. I'm confident we can do that.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Walton.
Yeah, good evening, Matthew. Good evening, Louise. My question is on page 34, and it's about the implications of the medium-term financial strategy. Recommends that general reserves are maintained at a minimum of £4 million to mitigate any unforeseen financial risks. And based on the above, the level of general fund balances at the 31st of March 2023 will be under the 4 million. Is it good practice to do this? And what are the implications of our general reserves being below the recommended minimum? And might this lead to intervention from the external auditors?
Well, we're not going there, Councillor Bond. We're not. And in fact, I think 4 million is very healthy. It's very healthy. When your turnover is 15 million, and you look at some councils around Lancashire who are operating on reserves of 1.5 in the general reserve of 1.5 million. Now, I am not, let's be really clear, I'm not suggesting that our reserves should go down to anything like that. But it may well be in the fullness of time, if we're going to ease out this bump in the road as I described it, we might have to accept for a time that we want the general reserve to go below 4 million. But don't, that is not my suggestion at this stage. And I won't be held to that. But it is potentially something we might want to look at. We are currently looking at all our reserves to see whether there's money that can be released. But it's a figure that council have agreed. So for the moment, that remains the target. Whether it stays that way is something for council to agree.
Can I just ask another question? You said that there's no debt for this financial year. is there a prediction for a debt for the next financial year?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, no, obviously, when you look at the size of the cash balances there, we are predicting to maintain those at a positive level. Ultimately, it depends on the levels of expenditure and the size of the capital programme. Obviously, when we assess any new capital scheme, we always work to make sure that we assume that borrowing is incurred just so as we can make it a completely financially viable model. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will borrow for a capital scheme. We only ever borrow when we need to. So although we might be incurring a lot of expenditure, we wouldn't borrow until we had used all of our cash balances, because one of the requirements of local government or regulations is you cannot borrow in advance of need. So one of the things at this moment in time was interest rates were low months ago. They're going up now. Are they going to go up any higher? Would it be a good thing to borrow while it's a little bit cheaper than what it might be? But we are forbidden to do that because we cannot borrow in advance of need.
Councillor Sharples.
I'm looking at page 35, the variances from budget. Just looking at the variances and overspends outlined, what is the trend for these variances over the last few years? And is there any way our budget process and monitoring could help us manage them better?
I would say that over the years we've been reasonably good at budgeting, and we've tended to come in with small underspends, but that we don't have a track record of being a million miles out with our budgeting. And I think that's no matter which political party's been running the council, the budgeting seems to have been relatively accurate. But they are only budgets. That's all they are. They're set, in the February before the year even starts. And as I think it was Harold Macmillan once said, events, dear boy, events. Things happen, and you have to work with them as they happen. But I'm as confident as I can be in the ability of our officers and managers to set budgets.
If I just add a point, I think obviously only coming into the council in the last financial year, and we did have underspends, we don't want to tie cash up, so we do absolutely review them thoroughly as part of the budget setting process to make sure that there is enough budget, but not too much budget. But as Councillor Tomlinson said, things fluctuate during the year. So again, we set the budgets for this financial year based on the information that we had to hand November, December, January. We set the budget, it was approved, and then since that there's been a pay award at 7% instead of the 2% we thought. Utilities have gone through the roof. We'd had no knowledge that would take place then. So it's just very much fluid, and we have to be reactive to it. And if I could just go back to a point Councillor Walton made about the £4 million. That's kind of precisely why we have the general fund reserve. It's entirely up to council at what level it sets it, 1 million, 6 million. The way we try and calculate it and the purpose of it is it's there to cover kind of risks. And in the budget report, we try and estimate and guess as many risks as possible that may come to fruition. That could be inflationary increases, an estimate of a disaster and how much it would cost to put it right. We build that up, and it's kind of on your absolute worst day when everything comes together. That we would need a cushion there to be able to get ourselves out of the hole. And I suppose what you would say is what's happened with inflation and within utilities and the pay award is one of those things we couldn't possibly have forecast, and it is a genuine use of what that reserve is specifically there for.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Tomlinson.
If I could just add to that, I think the other thing we have to remember is we are limited by law to a council tax increase of 1.99%. So we can't react to inflation, an extra cost, by saying, well, we'll get some more income in. because we're not allowed to buy. Well, we could have a referendum, but that would cost us about £500,000 to administer. So there's not much point doing that. So I think, you know, we have to realise our costs are going up far faster than our potential to raise extra income. So, but the other thing I would say is, should we decide to use some of the general reserve to help us through, we could only do that, in my view, if we had a clear plan of how we were going to change our costs and income, so that would be a very, very short period that we would use our reserves to help us through.
Thank you. Can I just remind the councillors here, if you don't switch your mic off, then the thousands of viewers on YouTube that are watching can only see you sat there not saying anything and not see the visual response from the cabinet member and the director. So it's just a reminder, and look on the screen up there, and it'll remind you when you just see yourself sat there after you've asked a question whilst the panel's talking. Thank you. Councillor Colin Coulton.
Thank you, Chair. Page 36, the second bullet point. It discusses in quite a bit of detail staffing and staffing problems. Could you talk us through these problems, and could they not have been anticipated so that we could have baked in, you know, the costings into the budget? Thank you.
I think everywhere you go at the moment, people are talking about the difficulties of recruitment and retention, and that seems to get worse the more qualified the position that you're recruiting to. But you've only to walk up any high street, for instance, and every shop seems to have a sign in saying we are recruiting. There's 600,000 people have taken themselves out of the labour market altogether since COVID. They had time off and decided, you know what, I don't want to go back to work. The dreaded B word that we're not allowed to mention has already been raised tonight, which again has taken people out of the labour market. And partly, I would argue that that's what's driving inflation. You know, we've got work that needs to be done. We haven't got enough people to do it. So the people who are available to do it say, well, I'll come and do that, but I'm going to charge a bit more. And that helps to drive inflation. We've always said, you know, for our entire 3.5 years while we've been made up the administration, we'd be really ambitious for this council and we want this council to do things. But it's becoming difficult. And if you want to do things, you've got to get the right people in place. And at the moment, it's hard to get the people and it's expensive to get the people. I obviously wanted to get to a place where we use agency staff to cover core jobs at an absolute minimum and just bring in agency for the specialist jobs that we need to do for the projects that we're working on. But at the moment, I think it's true to say we're having to use some agency staff to cover what I would call core jobs. It's just where we are.
Right, thanks for this. I mean, there's obviously, well, it appears to be an issue in this department, the commercial department, because the overspend is obviously, I mean, I don't know the whole, but the overspend is significant. So was this only discovered this quarter, or has that been a figure that's always been there, that's been growing? I mean, it's being managed.
I think it has been managed through vacancy management and things like that, but it's been an issue. I've said this directorate, which actually this function, which is in my directorate, has been an issue for us for the whole 3.5 years, recruitment and retention, getting the right people in the right place. Some of this is going into the new shared services that we talked about at full council, and I'm hoping that'll bring some stability and resilience to those roles, so that we can get people in who can see that there's a career path with the organisation in those roles, and will come and want to stay and contribute to what we're trying to do. But there's no getting away from it, especially in this area. And it's not just South Ribble who are struggling in these areas. It's everywhere, and recruiting is really difficult.
Well, as long as there's some kind of a mitigation plan in place, whether it's successful or not, I suppose, is driven by the outside market. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Following on from there does seem to be a trend to spend money on agency staff, and we understand that there are problems. But it does seem to be a trend that you're employing agency staff to cover the vacancies, and hopefully what mitigations are being put in place so that we can employ the right staff.
I think I'm hoping that my comments about shared services addressed some of that. We'll be working obviously closely with Chorley on building a team where the problem over the last 12 years, as councils have cut the budgets, you end up with very small teams. So there might only be 2 or 3 people in a team, and one of them goes off sick, one of them gets maternity, one of them retires, and the whole thing collapses in on itself. I've always said, for me, whilst there are savings to be made from shared services, the big attraction for me is you build resilient teams. So instead of having a team of 3, across a council, you can have a team of 5 or 6. So if somebody goes off sick, there's the capacity to cover. And not only that, you can recruit, because if you have a team of 6, you can have a range. So you can have an apprentice, you can have a manager and an assistant manager, where you just simply can't do that when you've only a team of 2 or 3. So we can't get away from the fact that it's difficult. It's a difficult area for everybody. But we are trying to put something in that we're hoping can mitigate some of that, as you said.
And I also have a question about the 230,000 forecast overspend on waste and recycling, which you said it's due obviously to the pay increase. I just wondered, when it was budgeted for originally, was the pay increase included in the budget figures that we were given?
Yeah. So when the costings and budget was set for bringing the service in-house, it was based on the information that we received at that time, on the salaries that the individuals were on at that time, with no details of a pay award that was subsequently given to those staff. So they already moved over on a higher rate than what we had budgeted for, because the increase was given after we received the information. Compounded with that is, and so I should say though, but because of the savings that we made by bringing the contract in-house going forward, so not this financial year, but in going forward beyond, we would have been able to contain that cost. That wouldn't have been an issue. Another reason for the overspend in the current financial year is the pay award given to everybody. So all of those individual members of staff, if they're full-time, they will get the 1925. Whereas actually we budgeted for 2%. So you've got 2 things that are impacting this year, one of which can be contained within it. But obviously the pay award is on a recurring basis, and we've not got any additional funding for that going forward.
Councillor Adams, you had a supplementary, I think.
I did. Thank you, Chair. And I just want to say, I think the putting money in the pockets of our staff, I think, certainly be celebrated, personally anyway. Just in terms of looking at how competitive we are in terms of a council, in terms of recruitment, how do we measure against some of the councils locally in terms of pay, in terms of what staff benefits there are, in terms of professional development, etc. And are we offering competitive rates and also benefits to try and reduce our agency spend? And I appreciate Councillor Tomlinson saying we want to try and reduce that over time, but have we got a plan in place in terms of staff benefits and professional development currently in place now?
Now, I'm aware we do some benchmarking, and as when it comes to benefits, we do have some, great. We've got free parking. Don't get that if you work at Chorley. So we do have a benefit. Whether I think that's a question I'm going to pass on to our new chief exec when he takes over at the end of the year, because I think that's be a really interesting piece of work It may well be being done at the moment, and if it is, we'll report back to you. But
Okay, thank you for that. And I think the next question is Councillor Adams again.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just take you to page 47, which is Appendix 3. Has the proposed review of earmark reserves been completed? How are the level of earmark reserves set to ensure they remain appropriate? Thank you.
So we're meeting this week, actually, to go through these to see whether they remain appropriate and whether tweaks can be made in order to help us over this little financial period or not. Or indeed, it may well be that, you know, some brave manager will come back and say, I want more in my reserve. But yeah, as it happens, I'm happy to report that we've already diaried a session in to go through these. It's right that we have reserves. It's right that we have money set aside for a rainy day, but we also have to recognise when it's raining.
Thank you. Right, I'll now move on to questions from members not on the panel. Questions from members of the public. I have to say it. Okay. Now, Darren, could you please formulate the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the themes from tonight. So the panel thanks the Cabinet Member and Director for attending and answering questions. The panel welcomes the offer to provide more information on what the Council is doing to recruit and retain employees. And the panel looks forward to receiving information on the review of earmarked reserves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7. And of course, Councillor Matthew Tomlinson and Louise Matheson, Director of Finance, will remain for this item and advise us on it. I now invite the Cabinet Member to say a few words of introduction.
And sorry, again, it's my fault, probably. I did speak to this report as part of my preamble to the last one. Yes, I'm sorry for diverting from the agenda. I don't want to repeat it all again, but we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Right. So I have the questions then. So first question from myself on page 55, paragraph 13. Please could you talk us through the slippage and why capital budgets have to be reprofiled? And secondly, is there anything that can be done to improve capital programme delivery against budget in the future? Thank you.
So slippage and reprofiling can happen for a variety of reasons. Projects, as you know, large projects can be affected by outside influences, or it could just be that you make the decision. Do you know what? We're really busy. We're not going to get that done, so we'll get it done next year. As far as the ones in here are concerned, as I said, the big one, the decarbonisation and refurbishment, it's a huge piece of work. We're tied by how quickly we can get contractors in to do work. We're also tied, you remember, we got the grant based on us doing some works quite quickly, and then so that will have to be done before the rest. And I think I would much prefer us at the 6-month point to say, do you know what, we're going to reprofile this because this is just not going to happen in this year, and be honest, rather than get to the end of the year and say, oh, we promised we were going to do £40 million work and we've only done 19. So I think actually sometimes it's easy to look at slippage and reprofiling negatively. Oh, you said you were going to do that and now you haven't. But actually, if you're monitoring it properly, you can see where the blockages may be, and you can do this during the period. I think that's much more open and transparent and helpful for everybody.
Yeah, okay. There's always issues though if you've got external factors that you can't influence. Councillor Adams, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, really. In terms of the capital programme, since 3.5 years ago, the administration took over, the capital programme is quite significant in terms of what you've wanted to do and the level of that. And I know that residents that have contacted me outside of South Ribble are quite, I would say, jealous in terms of what we've done, particularly in terms of the playgrounds. So my question to you is, Councillor, how can we sustain that moving forward? And are you confident that we can do that? Not just obviously playgrounds, but all the other things as well.
So there's a range of ways that we fund our capital programme. So whether it's we're setting money aside on an annual basis, whether it's SIL money or contributions from developers, or whether we're applying for grants. So, for instance, the Coach House project got a significant grant, whereas Worden Hall project, we funded that internally from money that had already been set aside. And most of the playgrounds we have funded through SIL money or developer contribution. So there's a range of ways of doing it. We have been very successful. I'm quite happy and confident to say that in what we've done in the last 3.5 years. And I know of both councillors and officers from neighbouring authorities who look at what we've done in the last 3.5 years with more than a hint of jealousy. Whether we can sustain that level for another 4 years, we're working on those plans at the moment. Like any political group, we'll have to go to the electorate with a plan, and we're working on that plan at the moment. But I'm glad that friends from outside South Ribble as well as within have noticed the difference that we've made.
Are there any further questions? Yeah, that's what. Sorry, yeah. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Again, I'll take you to page 57, paragraph 25. With the increase in interest rates having a positive impact on income received, what impact does this have on our other investments as part of the Treasury management strategy? Thank you.
You could tell my body language that the Treasury management strategy is not my favourite part of my responsibilities, so I shall defer.
Thank you. So the figures at point 25 shows that we originally budgeted to receive £150,000 worth of income, and actually the forecast for the year is now 345,000. So a combination of things. Obviously, the cash balances have remained at a higher rate than we forecast. Once you get slippage in capital programmes, that's another reason we've not drawn down the cash balances. We've had more to invest, and that's generated more income. But most significantly is the increase in interest rates. So we hold our the total amount of funds available in various cash balances, and that might be that we lend the money to other local authorities or police authorities or other local government organisations around the country. They will want it for, say, 1 month, 6 months, 9 months, whatever, and basically we'll find out how much they want for what period of time, and we can consider whether that matches with our cash flow and take it. But then we also have money that we have in investment funds. It's secure. I mean, we always ensure that our first priority is that the funds are secure and that we can get them whenever we need them, and we will always consider those two as a priority above the yield or the interest rate. But so we have I would say a relatively conservative approach, the small c, to our investments really, and you could be more ambitious and get more higher interest rates, but that also comes with high risk. And I'm sure some people in the room will remember the Icelandic crash. So if it's too good to be true, it is. So.
Thank you for that response, Louise. Got one more question, but I've not written down the name.
Me.
Sorry.
It's all right. So
Councillor Walton, it's like I'm,
so my question is on page 57, paragraph 27. With the cost of living crisis, what provisions are being put into place for people who may not be able to pay the business rates and council tax and other things? And what impact would this have on our budget provision in the future?
Well, the first thing to say is, of course, any debt management officer will tell you that your council tax is the thing that you have to pay first, because there are, you can put off a car loan, you can put off lots of other things, but your council tax is a statutory bill that you have to pay. But we recognise that for some people that's going to be difficult. And we've recently held a cost of living crisis conference. So we're talking to people like the county council, local charities, churches, about how we can help people, especially over this winter. And we have a corporate policy on how we collect debt from those in a, I can't remember what the phrase is, but it's in a, let's just say we don't take people to court as very, very, very last resort. We will work with people wherever we can, and clearly it's going to be a difficult year for people.
Are there any other questions from members on the panel? No. Any questions from members not on the panel? Questions from members of the public? Could I please have the recommendations, Darren?
Thank you, Chair. The panel thanks the Cabinet Member and Director of Finance for attending and answering the questions, and the panel welcomes the detailed report and looks forward to future updates. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So that draws the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight, Louise and Matthew. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.